Welcome to Can I Get a Retake, where education meets innovation. Every month, we host conversations with the thinkers, teachers, and researchers shaping the world around us. We hope you tune in, get inspired, and join the conversation.
So we'll make it easy and have the first question just be, want to introduce yourself, your accolades, your experience.
Oh, wow. Well, where to start? So my name's Don Bryn, and let's see. I am the music program manager for the State College of Florida in Sarasota, Bradenton area. And I'm also the head of the music keyboards and music theory areas. So I teach music theory, I teach music appreciation, ear training, piano. Um, yeah, that's the whole, oh, and class piano. Yeah, that's kind of my core.
Only that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this year we were short a staff member, a faculty member. So I was also teaching composition and running the composition program. But
And you do have vast experience as a composer.
that's kind of my main thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So my main thing really is composing. I got my master's degree in composition. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. But right off the bat, I kind of knew I didn't want to make my income tied to that. So I made my living playing piano. So playing piano, conducting shows for most of my career. So yeah.
What brought you to Florida and to education?
So it's funny. I kind of fell into education backwards because I went straight through. I got my undergrad, then my master's. And then I went right into the workforce. So I had this really great opportunity. My very first real gig was in Australia. And
Ooh.
like surprise, can you be in Australia next week? And I said yes.
Of
So
course.
so I did. That led to like just traveling all around the world for a long, long, long time. And then I was mostly doing more like I say traditional jazz, but a jazz player would say would call it something different, but more old school jazz, more traditional. And so I had friends that already moved to Sarasota, and I was checking out the area when I was kind of trying to not travel as much. And it just seemed like a great spot to come to. There's a lot of that kind of music is appreciated a lot here, so there's a lot of work. So that's how I ended up here. And then I was doing a lot of work accompanying and starting to play for shows and those kinds of things. And so I actually got a job accompanying at the college. And then they went, the first introduction, I introduced myself to students. Oh, I have my master's in composition, and the whole faculty went, "What? Like what?" And so they started. So I sort of eventually, when a position opened up teaching theory, they brought me in as an adjunct to do that, and I kind of came in that way, and I found out I really like it, and I think I'm pretty good at it. So that's how I got into academia, kind of through the back door, through real experience, and then teaching because I was good at it.
That's incredible. That's a journey that we've heard a few other people say too. They came across it and they took it and they found that they really enjoy it. What is it like teaching students music and music theory?
So at SEF, we're a part of the community college system. So we're a 2-year school, and that means we're an open access school. So anybody can come in. Now they do have to get placed into which theory level they'll go into, but you have a really wide range. You have a wide range of people in terms of experience, how much they already know, and also in terms of what they want to do. Some people want to go more into musical theater. Some people want to be performers. Some people want to write. Some people want to be more in the business end or production, more the technology end. And all those people have different sort of approaches. So I find, well, two things. One, the more practical experience you have, the sort of helpful that is to find ways to explain things to students in ways that they're going to relate to. And the other is the more varied ways you can explain it, the more you're going to approach different students' ways of learning or styles of learning. You're going to have different ways of explaining it so they might grasp it. Yeah.
And what was your reason for partnering with GRL to write your title, Now Hear This?
Um, I had been working already on a couple projects for my music theory classes, like apps and things like that to make those classes online materials. And so when the opportunity came up with GRL, I can't remember exactly how we connected. I think it came from another faculty member that they were looking to produce some titles. And I was really involved with teaching music appreciation at the time. I had quite a few sections of that. And I said, oh, yeah, I'd be really interested in doing that. And I kind of developed my own approach to teaching music appreciation because I've been doing it for a few years then. And I went, oh, I wish I had a book that did just what I wanted to do, that was a little more concise. And, one of the important things about the book was that I have so many students who take music appreciation because they think, I love music. This will be an easy class for me to take. I can get my humanities credit and take this class. But I ran into a lot of what I would consider a type of prejudice. And I don't mean that in a really bad way, just in a way that we have our preferences in music. Music is so emotional to us that we have things we really like and things we don't like. And it's part of what I wanted to do. Well, part of what you have to do in music appreciation is open the appreciation to all kinds of music. But I found I was not able to open as many doors with the textbook when we just started history, going straight through history. So my textbook really starts at the beginning with a scientific approach. We even have a whole first chapter on science. What is the science of sound and music? And then we talk about sort of being an anthropologist in terms of music. How would you look at it objectively? How would you be able to describe the music of the whole world to an alien race? So you can't just talk about what's in your culture. What are all the cultures and all the music? So, and that was really one of the primary things that I wanted to address, was get students' minds open immediately. And to do that, you have to sort of give them the power of opening their mind, giving them the choice to look at music objectively.
Right. Were there any common myths or misconceptions about music or music history that you wanted to challenge specifically with your title?
Well, first of all, I was writing the book specifically for music appreciation, which is, a national course title. And so it has certain restrictions, like you're basically looking at Western music history. So the approach could not be in terms of like world music. And I mean, we incorporate as much of that as we can, but it's still focused on Western history music because that's sort of the guidelines we're given. And so I think what I really wanted to do, I love music. I love music theory. I love 20th century, all the explorations that happened in the 20th century. And most of us in our everyday life are just exposed to what comes on the radio in the background in the grocery store, and it's all very sort of, it's actually in the 20th century became very, very narrow. 3 minutes, pop song form, 3 chords, guitar, bass, drums, voice. It's very sort of similar. Everything's very similar. It's all about love songs, or like it's very similar even in terms of text, lyrics. And so I really just wanted people to be open to the complete history. Yeah, I do a discussion video. We have discussions in my class every week, and I do videos. And I did this video in Paris in front of a chocolate shop. I was like, just look at all the different kinds of chocolate in the shop. But if you think in terms of music and all the music we're studying, what's on the radio is one kind of chocolate, and that's all you're allowed to eat the rest of your life. So, be open to trying some new things. Anyway, it seems to get them talking about it anyway.
And we exist at such a great time where we do have access to find all of that music if we're inspired to, or taught that it even exists, that it's out there. Yes, that is exciting. What do your students kind of resonate with when they're given kind of that wider span of selection?
It runs the gamut, and I'm pleased with the number of students now who will say afterwards, I would go to another one of these concerts. I really enjoyed it. I never thought I would like an orchestra or a jazz concert or, and I've got my friends now listening to Mozart. They love it. Those kinds of things that's really promising. But I also have other people who dig in and say, no, I like that. This is my kind of music. And that's okay too, because we start talking about it. And you can get them talking about, well, what about that music do you like? What is it? How is it put together? What's the function? What is its functions? What are the music vocabulary you would use to describe it? So,
and to understand certain types of music and certain areas of history is to get a better understanding of that particular era. Really know more about where we came from, you have to understand the culture, which includes the music and the art and everything that was happening then.
Yes,
So,
for sure. I think
no,
they
go
watch, they see movies about time periods and things, but each when we get to the history parts of the book and they have to read the first part of the chapter is always about everything else that was going on. And there's the arts, the visual arts and everything. Um, and to realize that some of the things are the people are still the same. We get to
Yeah.
Berlioz and they talk about this guy was a stalker. And he was like, into drugs and stalking, and he was crazy and all this stuff, and his symphonies about that. I mean, they connect with that. Yeah.
Right. We recently had one of our other authors who actually teaches English composition, but he does it through the lens of music. So each chapter is like based on a different lyric or a different song, and he teaches them to analyze that song and to use the music in order to be able to write, in a more inspired way. So it's really interesting to see how different authors are approaching and using music to not only educate students, but kind of, get them to broaden their mindsets.
That's really good. That's actually starting with something they're already engaged in their life, emotionally engaged in, and then say, well, now how can you connect it to something sort of more academic or objective or
Speak to the power of it, the power of music.
Yeah.
Speaking to that, I was really interested when you talked about going to over 100. I think it was it 120 countries that you've been to. Is there anything universal that you found about the power of music in each of those countries, or anything even that's surprised you?
This is kind of a tough question. It's actually up to 130 countries now, and that is a brag, because now I'm kind of, once I got to a certain limit, I'm like, I got to start collecting. I've worked with a lot of international musicians, especially when I was traveling a lot. I worked with a lot of international musicians. And what was great, I didn't realize until much later that we had a common language in music. And you don't even think about that later. We all just started playing together. And then you go, oh, wait, how do we all know how to do this? We're completely opposite ends of the world. So that's really fascinating. I was real lucky in my undergraduate to be part of a group called I went to Duquesne University, the Duquesne University Tamburitzins, and it's a performing arts organization that represents like the Balkan states, the arts of the Balkan states, so the costuming and the dress and the singing and the music. And so I learned a lot about music that's very different from Western music, all these compound meters and different scales and things like that. So that was, for me, was like really eye-opening. I'd love to share that experience with students, like just something completely outside of what you're used to that just is fascinating. You can explore it. It's a whole new thing. But the other thing I find really interesting is when I do travel, you tell people, oh yeah, I'm a musician or I'm a music teacher. And they're all like, oh, like they just like you immediately because everybody likes music.
How can you not? I know with music appreciation, you're kind of separated into that, teaching the Western canon. But what outside of that really inspires you or excites you?
So this is really where I think today film is a big, important influence because so I took this program a couple years ago. I got another diploma in film and game scoring. I took it through the European Academy of Fine Arts. So there were people in my program. It was online. So I had someone from Shanghai. I had someone from Lisbon, someone from Taiwan. There were people from all over in my class. One of my teachers was in Oslo. Another one was Irish, but working in Dubai. It was very, very international, right? And we had a lot of discussion about how the core of orchestral music for scoring is Western. So you have all these other cultures trying to learn, how do I write Western orchestral music? But then we also had those of us who were coming from more of a Western tradition going, wait, how do I write Chinese music? I just think composers, especially out of musicians, have a real unique willingness to be curious and explore. And I think film is one of those big things, because if you want to write for film, you have to be able to write everything from medieval music to Chinese music and Tibetan music to Eastern European to Middle Eastern. You have to just be able to do all of it. And so that just means being able to be curious and learn about it.
And even some of the music, like if something is set in Egypt or Arabia, they have that very distinct, like Western take on what Arabic music should sound like. So there is a little bit of that that's kind of interesting too, where people are trying to learn, but they're still tied to their biases and what things should sound like.
It's true.
Yeah.
And film is really curious because such of the early history of film, if you study it, came from Western music, and it was all orchestral music, and why that happened. And it wasn't really till like Lawrence of Arabia, and they were trying to bring in this, but they brought it over top of the Western sound. And that's still what happens a lot. The core sort of sound of a lot of music in film is orchestral. But there have been breaks from that, and people willing to do new things. I kind of like it when that happens.
And you've had experience composing for film and composing for concert halls. What is the difference? Like, what things do you have to take in mind for one versus the other?
Yeah, there's real two main things. One is just the technology. If you're writing for concert, you're writing for real instruments. Everything has to be exact, legible, exactly the way it would be played on that instrument. And when you're writing for film, you're also using a lot of technology, so you can use a lot of non-real sounds and things like that. But the real main difference is form. So if you're writing for concert, you're trying to communicate an idea, but it has to come across in a way that makes sense to people, just like speech does. So, if you're writing a speech, you tell them something, or you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. Right? So you have this introduction material, then expanding and explaining the material, and then you summarize. And the same thing happens in music. There's something about psychologically, you're introducing new material, but it always has to be balanced with something they're familiar with, or you lose them. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of forms that have developed that we just follow because we know they work. People enjoy listening to them, and just when they're starting to get lost or bored, they go, oh no, there's something I remember, and so you come back to it. So your form is dictated by the psychology, human psychology. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you're writing for film, the form is dictated by what happens in the scene and when it happens visually. So you're given a scene, and you have to first map out the structure of your music based on that. So it's a very different approach. Very different approach. You don't have to worry about when material comes back or not. You have to worry about, does it support the scene?
Do you find one inspires you more than the other?
I wouldn't say inspires me more, because they have different functions. One is supporting something else. But I do just love a good piece of concert music, because I'm aware of how much that composer must have, how much thought it takes into that composer really planning a large piece of music. It takes a lot of architectural understanding of music. Yeah.
You did talk a little bit about tech and how that's kind of changing in the future. And you also have experience as a full stack developer, which is really interesting. Do you feel like that you have to, or musicians in this time and this era have to have a certain set of technical skills in order to succeed?
I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer to that, because we have students that go all directions. So we now have a production degree here, so students can actually major in music technology. Those students need to have technical skills, and they get a broad range, because they could go into live music, they could go into recording, they could go into support, sound support. I mean, there's just so many things they could do. So yes, they have to have sort of a broad range. I think probably all musicians need to have some introduction. You need to know what's the basic software for publishing music, at least, maybe for recording. But there are students, if you're still going to focus, it is possible to still focus completely on performance. But even then, you're going to need an iPad and know how to turn your pages and how to notate, so there's some technology involved in everything now. I don't think you can avoid it. If you're going to go into education, you definitely need to have a broad base of skills, because that changes so quickly, and your school is going to change what your LMS is next year, and you've got to learn a new one, and you know how to connect that to your other technology. And so you definitely need to have some skills. Yeah.
Right. When it comes to tech, we're in an era right now with generative AI that not only can do a lot in terms of writing content, but there's some like Sona, I think is one of them, that purports to create music as well. What is your kind of take on generative AI when it comes to music creation?
I don't think I'll be popular with what I'm going to say, but so far now I have not gone really deep into AI and what it's able to do musically. But some people have brought me projects and things they've done in AI. And this is kind of my take. What I've heard so far are fine in the realm of the 3-minute pop song.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think one of the reasons that works is that AI is learning from a broad range and picking out the most common characteristics and processes and functions, which makes sense because that's what we do in pop music. We've picked the most common processes, functions, topics, and and because we know they sell. And so I think I can understand how they could replicate that. But I'm not convinced, and I wasn't moved necessarily by the music. And I think that's the part we're missing. Like there's a connection that happens between people. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think it'll be fine. It'll probably be creating our elevator music before long and
right.
all that. But who really pays attention? Who is engaged by elevator music?
I don't think you're supposed to be engaged by elevator music. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not going to completely say it's impossible, but I think we'll miss the human engagement, the connection between people.
Right. It's that what can we do to make sure that we're preserving that human element?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I don't know if we can quantify the human element, but it does involve a human connecting with another human in some way. I don't know. I might not be popular saying that, but that's my thought so far.
I don't think that's quite unpopular. I think a lot of people are still at the stage where we need to see this play out. And there's just some things that humans have when it comes to those relationships, like you said, that just can't be replicated. Hopefully not. I don't think can be replicated. I am curious, looking into the future, if you have any exciting new projects that are kind of on the horizon.
That's a good question. I think I mentioned at the beginning that composing is kind of that's my love. That's my core thing. And I just actually have a concert next week, commissioned to write some pieces here. And that's kind of, to me, a big deal because I've been here a lot and I'm known as a player and I work a lot playing. But, people here don't really know my composition, so I'm excited about that. And so I've sort of put it on my work goals for next year to really let my composition come back forward. And when I started teaching, I can do it from the back door, so I had to really learn academia and how do you organize not so much the classes, because that I'm pretty good at, but it's the administration and how do you organize and plan for the future. And now I'm the program manager, so I have to think about those kinds of things. So I've done that for a couple of years, and now I can focus again on, okay, what's next? It's time to get back to composing and publishing and reaching out with my pieces. And so that's kind of what I'm excited about, I think.
When you're writing, when you're composing, where do you go to for inspiration?
Ideas can come from anywhere. And it can be something you've been reading about or studying, or it can be, and just a germ, and then you figure out how to expand that germ. So now that I've been teaching composition here, I teach my students that a composition is a little universe you create. And so whatever your idea is, that inspire you. There's a physics to music, it's a physics of sound, but there's a physics to music. And so that's where theory all comes from. It's studying what is the physics of music, what has made things work, what are the overtones, what are how do these chords work together. So you can look within any idea and find what are the relationships between the notes, what can those add up to, what are they, where's the sun, where's your home base, and then how are those other things floating around, and they each have different qualities. If you're working with a scale, what are the notes of each of those? What are the qualities of each of those notes? How do they work together? Certain ones push here or pull you there, and some of them are moons of others, so they're harder to land on. They're not as powerful, and all of those things. So you can eventually develop ideas from that, I think.
So there's kind of a technicality that's there. Yes.
There's definitely physical properties to notes.
Yeah. Which, once you say that, makes complete sense. But as a layperson, it seems you wouldn't think it naturally, I don't think. But it's interesting hearing that. And that's something that I think I can definitely take into consideration as I listen to more music. Like seeing how I can see kind of the science behind the way things are formed and shaped.
Mm-hmm. Well, even the most basic, if you're listening to a song, the most basic is, well, somewhere there's more tension and then somewhere it releases. And you go, oh, there's the home base. There's the sun of this little universe, right? We've made it home. So even little kids, it's amazing. Little kids can sing a song. They don't know anything about notes or anything, but the physics of the notes are built in there the same way they can see colors, right? And so the whole solfege system was or the education part of the solfege system was built around that. We can build on these skills that kids naturally have, even if they can't read or write. And so we teach ear training. It's the same thing. You've had these skills since you were a little kid. You can hear the pitches. Now you just are going to sort of manually take control of those skills and train them to be more under your control. What note is that? How is it relating to other notes? Those kinds of things. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going off on my own little tangents now about teaching.
No, that's actually some of the parts of these conversations that I like the most, is when you can tell people are so passionate about what they do and they're going to explain it to you, and I'm here for it. I would really like to know more as someone who enjoys music and wants to know more about the background behind it. So I appreciate it. It's a lovely tangent. Well, the last question that I have, and it's not on your sheet, but it's a chance for you to kind of rant for a minute or two about some kind of misconception in music theory or in education or in composing, anything that you're kind of touched to where you just want to set the record straight. We have people take this very seriously and we have people not take it seriously at all. So it really, runs the gambit.
It's funny. I'm trying to think, what do I usually get on my soapbox about? Okay, this is actually related to music appreciation, and one of the things that I try and get the students engaged in. And it really has to do with, in the 20th century, the going from a smorgasbord of all kinds of music, types of music styles that were a business that made money, down to 99%, well, 95% of the business now is a 3-minute pop song. So what happened? Why is that? And, I have my own little theories about business itself, as part of it, corporate law and how, just corporation, and we've got to keep making more and more money. And so this sell more of it, that kind of thing. It's sort of narrowed the field down. And also the fact that once we got to the 20th century, a lot of we started exploring a lot, experimenting with things. And some of those were accessible, but many of them were not, which means that orchestras started losing audiences, performance spaces started losing audiences. So, that was another big factor. But I just, I feel sad, I guess, that there's these amazing composers who study years and years and could craft these amazing compositions, these structures of sound. And so many people don't even know how to appreciate it because we're just so accustomed to hearing a 3-minute pop song. And if it doesn't have words, I'm not going to listen to it. We're very cultured toward this emotional engagement of, and I think also with a very sort of limited range of, if it's a love song, we'll listen to it, but so that's kind of my rant, is like, I really want you to get your ears open. Like, don't just be sold your music. You're basically sold what you're going to listen to, what's played all around you, because it's easy to sell and easy to collect the money and the revenues on. And there's a lot of other great music out there. You just have to explore it and be willing to learn a little bit more about what's going on. Was that a good soapbox?
I think that's a great soapbox. Is there anything that you want to say or promote or tell an audience that I haven't asked?
Well, not really, except that we haven't really talked much about the textbook, and I just it'd be great to just say, check it out on GRL and see how it's. I'm a very efficient kind of person, so I wrote it to write perfectly in a semester and not have to deal with, I've had textbooks that have like 40 chapters and you have 14 weeks. Well, how are you going to portion, those kinds of things. So it's really organized very well, and that it deals, I think, with sort of today's student and it starts right off with the approach of their prejudices that they're not even aware of, that their cultural, being so ingrained in their culture, how do we get them to look outside of it? So that's the only thing I would really say. At least take a look at it, see what you think.
Well, thank you for answering all of my questions. I really think you did a great job, and I think it's going to be really interesting.
Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate you asking me and
Of course.
treating me like a star. I feel so important today. Thank you.
You are a star.
Thanks for tuning in to Can I Get a Retake, a podcast by Great River Learning. If you liked the episode, show your support by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. For detailed show notes and transcripts, visit greatriverlearning.com. Can I Get a Retake is brought to you by hosts Michelle Manaman and Deanna Plussel. Our show is produced and edited by Michaela Albee and Maggie Christensen. Artwork for the podcast is crafted by Michelle Manaman. Our intro music is courtesy of Comma Media. We'll be back soon with another captivating chat with a top GRL educator.